on the paper. And I have bits of hot press surfaces. Hot press paper, arches, hot press, and some illustration board. We've had this before, and I find it helpful, so that's why I'm repeating it. But these can be used just for warm-up, and I'm going to talk a little about my thought about the warm-up. But for you to think about the mark you make on paper or board or Bristol board, whichever you might pick. And as I said, often in watercolor we're more concerned with wash and water, which I certainly believe in, but the salient mark is important also. So I am hoping you might start a little bit with one tiny little exercise and use one of the little gray scrap paper for a quick drawing thing. Then, the objects you see today, they are all orbs, circular, round, closed shapes. They offer all sorts of different things, and I very deliberately, this is why I didn't want anyone to touch them or play with them, or change everything, or eat them. In the beginning, I set up 3 different stations in very different ways, and I wanted this to be kind of and they do not have to stay like this now, this set, but I just wanted to make a point. You could even walk around and take a look, because in my opinion, the ways in which things are put, set into a still life, set into any arrangement, these ways are very significant. And they tell you something. This one, to start with, if you look at it, I set it up in a very regular way, sort of chevron. And when you look at it, I mean, it's rigid in a way. It's a design. And each time you use a word like that, you are committing something to your head about how these things lie. You start seeing then the color relationships in a certain way because it's directing you. You might see the kind of complement going here with the plums and the little tomatoes, or a thread of yellow going through. I mean, different people might see different things too, which is, of course, the whole point of using common sources. So what I want to do is jog your minds a little about when you put things together, the way in which they go, touch each other, don't touch each other. For instance, these over here, the contrast, I clumped in groups that are grouped already by great color. I mean, they're separate. And hoping that you will see that by doing that, it's making you and your eyes make a interpretation of their placement. Over here, again, there's a little bit of a overall pattern, not too unlike the one in the middle. But again, I've clumped these darks, the avocados and the plums here, the dark grapes and the plum there, and then the colorful little jewel-like things off to the side. If you articulate how you see these arrangements and articulate and change them if you wish to, as long as you all agree, then you're halfway to an interpretation that gives you some kind of a composition and some kind of hopefully a painting. Whenever you have any groups of things in still life, there are all sorts of threads. And there are narrative threads, there are color threads, there are shape threads, there are sorts of things, threads, fruits, vegetables, whatever. And you can keep expanding that. And I just want you to take that opportunity before you jump into whatever you want to do to articulate that to yourself. If it's at all helpful, write down some of these words on this lovely scrap paper. So that it gives you a little jump into how you might be putting these together. Then, when you get to this, all after the quick little exercise, just have these things, say them again. I'm just a believer. I'm not in over intellectualizing things, but in giving yourself the words. I mean, if you're mumbling to yourself and saying, all the darks are over here, and but the greens, the yellows, and then you might get to a point where you say, you know what would be so much more interesting to me would be to put all the yellows and oranges here, surround them with a dark river, and da, 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 da. You may not have total freedom to do everything you want, but you may have some group feeling or not. So that is my general thing. My second thing is to do with this, whatever you call it, this sort of scrap paper. And you can only imagine how thrilled I was to find gray, because it's my favorite color. Did just a little quick exercise, this won't take you a minute, to appreciate how, first place, how getting the shade right is information, huge information. Hopefully, when you look at this that I did, and I'll just show a moment what I did, you would be able to identify these. And there's another thing that goes into this, which is another whole thing that I'm introducing today, is size and proportion. But I'm not making a thing about it right now, but it's going to segue into the next sessions. There is a relative size, if I did, it's not a good surface, but now that might not convey.
It looks like a baked potato.
Right. It looks like a baked potato, but no, right. But what it is it's another grape. I can put that there.
Giant grape.
It's a giant grape. The minute you are off in relative size, I don't want to say off, different. Everyone understands. Like just no off here. No off. God, this is a close one. So that is not a grape here relative to its companions.
Potato.
It's definitely a potato, or worse. And the grape might read as a grape here. I mean, I feel I can identify these, but there could be arguments. But I've done them relative to the sizes. The other thing about relative size is it's a placement. For instance, if this pear is here, that is possible. If it probably would work better here, as though it were distant from this, because the avocado and the pear are probably not exactly the same size, but they actually are, can be. So those are the little things I wanted. Oh, and then these are the words I wrote down: orbs, jewels, planes, variety of round, that's what today is about, variety of round, and relative size. And the little exercise, quickie exercise, is to draw with appreciating the planes, not just, though you could, but you could do a perfect little grape like that and put a little thing. But try to do these different orbs with some broken line. The planes vary on some of these. Pears are very plainy. The plum is plain. The avocado, you will find, is plainy. And sometimes if you don't get that right, though that possibly is an avocado, it might look more avocado-ish if you appreciate that there are internal structural changes in a growing vegetable of the different types. Grapes, actually, of all the things, tend to be this. Unless they are dying, and then so there's information. If a grape is very like that, it is probably more likely on its way out. This grape is probably fresher. So the importance of appreciating these things. And the plum when you look at it, you'll find, that it has this wonderful, yep, thing. Would you call it a thing?
Fissure?
Fissure. Yes, this real crease, yeah.
Indentation.
Well, the labels tell us what they are, so we just put the label.
The label, if there is a label, I think I took some of them off. The other thing that a label does is it helps you with the contour, in case, that was something that you were interested in. Because, and if you do it wrong, it helps your viewer to say something's funny here. So you have to appreciate your ellipse. Here's your ellipse, internal ellipse of that avocado. If the label does not follow that rounded contour, in other words, like this, that it has to itself have that curve, days, hours. And think about doing this, getting those planes, and you're still thinking about roundness, but you're carving. Watercolor is carving. When you put down it just sort of stains in there, and you're not going to probably move it around much. See, it's not. Well, it's going to, the salient mark, that is going to show, which is another thing to look for. It also goes right through, so don't put it on top of your beautiful piece of 300-pound paper. But, getting those marks of describing the planes would be great on this, for fun. So there we are.
I'm still confused about plane versus line versus form. I still don't understand the
Okay,
concept
line,
of
this,
plane.
all right, line, this line like that.
Right,
That essentially is a contour, a line.
right.
When I'm trying to get the plane of how the surface of that checks a little, that it isn't all one. Every time I do this, it looks like a perfect grave. So,
Yeah.
well, everyone gets work.